call it the Black North. Should have called it the Cold North. Could you ever imagine that just a few hundred miles north of Cork could be this cold? Bleak, grey, cold fucking north. I just finished my training in July 74. Sergeant Kemble calls me in. O'Halloran, you're being posted to the border. 9 months tour of duty. Pack your things. That Monday I arrived. 20 years later, I'm still here.
I don't live here. I work here and try to stay alive. 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 2 days off. If the timing works, I go home on my 2 days off. If not, I eat, sleep and shite here. I don't go into the local supermarket, pub, chemist, unless it's to carry out a search. I don't speak to anyone in the street. I question them if need be. Name, address, occupation, where are you coming from, where are you going to? Often I don't believe the replies.
My grandfather was in the 3rd West Cork Brigade, Irish Republican Army, fought alongside Commandant Tom Berry. Now there was a boy for you. So here to the boys of Kilmichael, those brave lads so gallant and true, that fought 'neath the green flag of Erin, and they conquered the red, white and...
My father was in the RUC, joined straight from school, served 34 years. Had to retire due to his injuries, nothing to do with the Troubles. Chasing joyriders, crashed his jeep.
They say Barry's unit killed over 100 British soldiers. I wonder if any of them were men he had served with in that army on the battlefields of Mesopotamia, Egypt, Fallujah. Comrades soon to become enemies. Brothers in arms to become brothers at arm's length.
His father was in the RUC too. Grandfather McKeown. He was also in the RIC, and before that, a soldier in the Royal Irish Rifles. He survived the First World War, and maybe by then had gotten used to wearing a uniform. He moved from the RIC to the RUC once this border was put in place. I wonder what he thought of it all. Former colleagues now on the other side. They hadn't changed. Everything changed around them.
What's it like to aim your rifle at a person in the uniform you once wore? And the reason you're aiming it is because it is that uniform and what it represents. And yet only a few months earlier you wore it too. You know the feel of its material on your skin. You can smell the leather of the boots. The weight of the rifle in your hands. The rifle you were taught how to fire. And now you're about to fire.
Grandfather McKeown married a Catholic woman from Cavan. He was from Armagh, the Orchard County. Neither county wanted him after that. Same arguments, opposite perspectives. They moved to Belfast. Colchie's moving to the big smoke. That's where my father and his 2 brothers were born, and where my sister and I were born. Now I don't know where home is. I've moved 5 times in 10 years. Not because I wanted to, but because of security concerns. And it's not just me, it's Diana and the kids as well. We're like travellers, except it's not in our genes.
4 of us on our early 20s stayed in May McCarthy Estates, Goslock, Monaghan. £2.50 a week for B&B and a 3-course meal every night. Powdered asparagus soup for starter. Spaghetti bolognese for main course. Exotic dish for me in those days. And a rice or custard pudding for dessert. We all behaved as if this was normal grub for us back home.
My first posting was to Rosslea in southeast Fermanagh. Anyone else would just say Fermanagh, but we think specifics. North, south, east and west, then north, east and southwest. Seems strange to others. But here you're being posted to West Belfast rather than East Belfast. Some difference. Or North Antrim rather than South Armagh.
May had 3 daughters to put through university, which is why she took in boarders. All gals, except for the tax inspector who had an eye on May. But May's husband Johnny had an eye on him. The rest of us had an eye on the daughters. Patricia was stunning. A mop of red hair and legs that ran the whole way up to her armpits. When you first arrived at the digs, Johnny sat you down across the table and said, "I know you're young and you're away from home. You want to sow your wild oats. Oh, by Jesus, if there's any sowing to be done, it won't be done anywhere near this house." Johnny was 6'4" and had arms on him like tree trunks. But when Patricia appeared in the kitchen, wet hair tied up in a towel and the odd curl escaping and lying on the back of her neck, you often thought, I bet the push came to shove, I could outrun Johnny.
I had never been to Fermanagh before. Well, apart from 14 weeks training in Enniskillen. I mean, why would anybody want to go there? I arrived to a police station 1.5 miles from the border with County Monaghan. That time I didn't even know the counties on the southern side. Well, apart from Donegal, because we had relatives lived in Londonderry. And when we were young, we'd visit them, and they'd take us over the border into Greencastle or Muff.
I remember the first RUC man I had a conversation with. He was on one of these antiquated radios called an X-ray radio. Don't ask me why they called them that. The RUC had them too. In fact, it was them, the RUC, that installed them, and funded them, and maintained, and serviced them. How's that for cross-border cooperation?
Fermanagh was a shock to the system. There wasn't so much a barracks as an outpost. Even simple things like cigarettes or a bar of chocolate had to be helicoptered in. We're talking early 1980s here, and Bobby Sands had just been elected MP for the area before he died in a hunger strike. Not the sort of place you strolled up the street waving at shop owners who waved back at you. It was definitely not Bangor. My introduction to An Garda Síochána was quite an experience. Took me a while to even get that pronunciation correct. We get on to them about suspicious vehicles or movements in the area. RUC Officer 172 here, can you read me over? This is RUC Officer 172, can you read me over?
Gerdo Hadron here, what can I be doing for you?
RUC Officer 172 here, over.
I know, boy. Go ahead, so. Over.
Can I speak to someone with English if that's okay? Over.
The English are okay. Of course they are, so is most of my family over there working.
I don't want to cause a problem, but I just don't speak the language. Over.
A lot down here would say they did cause the problem, but sure, that's water under the bridge now.
You're in the bridge at the moment. It'll take us 20 minutes to get there. Over.
Went over to visit a few years ago, boys. What a session that turned out.
We don't travel on concession roads. We're not allowed to cross over into foreign territory. Over.
Went over to visit a few years ago. Took me a full week to recover.
If you could provide cover, that would be great. Over.
Okay. And don't worry about your northern accent. I can make you out. Over.
We a report about sheep worrying. Seems a dog is crossing the border.
That dog's crossing the border, you say? That is worrying. Well, the last I heard, he'd take himself off to the States when things got too hot round here for him. But he's back there saying...
A dog crossing the border, killing sheep.
A killing streak? You can be sure that's mad dog.
Can we do something about it? Catch it, maybe.
Sure, they've been trying for years to catch him. The likes of you and me wouldn't have much success.
He's causing a fair bit of trouble.
He's stolen 5 of our cars and enough uniforms to clothe the county.
There's 3 sheep missing from one farm alone, and one's been found half-eaten. Over.
Maybe he's ran out of safe houses and no one's feeding him. Over.
It seems he leaves early morning and crosses back over.
There'll be morning, that's to be sure, and a lot more before it's all over. Over and out. When I first arrived here, I did the beats around the village. 15 minutes from the station at the other end, and you didn't meet anyone along the way. If you did, it could take an hour or more. No one was counting the minutes. I had a walkie-talkie too. But once you were more than 150 yards away from the station, it was useless. You were on your own.
We only do foot patrols. We've an old rental to take us from one area to another during the day if we need to. We throw civilian jackets over the top of our uniforms and make our way by the back roads. Sheep worrying, broken down lorry, burglary, all part of everyday policing. Anywhere else, but not here. Even reports of an incident in a primary school have to be viewed as suspicious.
When the RUC want to meet, they give us a call and say they'll be here in 20 minutes. Here can be at any number of crossings, and even if they're not going to actually cross over, they'll only travel on true roads, never on those that are blocked or blown up. Dead ends can mean death. They tell us that the short warning, the 20 minutes, is because diarrhea may be listening into communications. And any longer would allow them to set up an ambush. I think that's given diarrhea more credibility than they deserve. I often wonder, is it that they think maybe one of us will pass on the information?
RUC Officer 172 here, can you read me over?
Officer 172, Guard O'Halloran here. Sorry, over.
This dog that's causing all the trouble.
It's McIvor's dog, had problems with him before. McIvor, that is, not the dog. Especially when he has a bateen in him. Lives just round the corner from me, a bloody nuisance.
You live around here?
Where else would I live? This is where I work.
You live amongst them?
I don't know who you mean by them, but yes, I suppose I do live amongst them.
And are you not afraid?
I'm afraid of the inspector, a fly fucker from Dublin. Thinks we're all culties. But the last time he visited, we took him out on patrol. I knew a young lad on your side was out shooting rabbits. His father had alerted me to it in case we might take it an attack. He gets out the car, and of course, there's the young lad with an old army jacket on, firing off a few rounds. I says to the inspector, "But Jesus, we've run into an IRA ambush. Get down quick." The inspector sees him and dives down. First time ever on the border. I says to the inspector, "Might be best for us to withdraw. What would you advise, sir?" He looks at me as white as a ghost and just nods his big jacking head. Might be a while before he visits again.
Is that not undermining a superior officer?
That's one way of looking at it. Another is that he might have went away with a better understanding of what life is really like here. What it is we have to deal with. And that will have to appear in his official report. Anyhow, I'll call in with McIvor. I know where he's working the double at the minute. He wouldn't want me telling the dole about that. Take it from me, there'll be no more problems with a dog.
Okay.
If you don't mind me asking, where are you from?
Newcastle.
Where's that now?
County Down.
Great GA county. Though I suppose you're not much into that.
As far as I'm aware, it's the GAA that don't allow us to play. no serving members of the security forces. It's terrible when sectarianism comes into sport.
Not sure you could call it sectarianism. It's not about religion. It's about membership of the security forces, regardless of what religion you are.
Well, it is about religion because most members of the RUC are Protestants. So.
Well, there you go. It's terrible when sectarianism comes into policing. You're used to play it myself. Nearly made it onto the Cork County Minors in '69. And sure didn't we all go to Eugene Murphy's 18th birthday party the night before? That put an end to any dreams of one day strutting my stuff in Croker. You bet you didn't know Doran was the first team from the north to win the All-Ireland. 1960.
No, it didn't.
First team from the north. Second team from Ulster. Kevin beat him to that.
Why are you making a distinction between Ulster and Northern Ireland?
Because there is a distinction. One is Ulster, the other is Northern Ireland.
Ulster is Northern Ireland. The Royal Ulster Constabulary, the Ulster Defence Regiment.
Calling it Ulster doesn't make it Ulster. Ulster has 9 counties, not 6. Sure, you have it in rugby.
You have one rugby.
9 counties. The Ulster rugby team is made up of people from Ulster, not just Northern Ireland.
I don't follow rugby.
Or geography or history either, by the sounds of it. Why don't you call yourselves the Royal Northern Ireland Constabulary?
I don't know.
But if you want to be separate from the rest of us, why hang on to something that's very definitely Irish? Your Down has a bit of a reputation for the hurling as well, you know.
The what?
Hurling. With the stick, a hurl.
Oh, seen those. That's the bat the IRA used to break people's legs. Must be some game.
Can't blame the game for what people do with the hurl off the pitch.
True. Loyalists use baseball bats.
Well, I suppose it would be difficult for them to get their hands on the horns. Hardly appropriate either. I'll be talking to you. Over and out.
We've been instructed to always behave in a formal manner with our counterparts on the other side. Pleasant, but formal. But all that talk about the GAA and it being only a game. They don't allow members of the RUC to play for them. And they have clubs. How's that going to attract young Catholics into the force? And they have clubs named after IRA terrorists. That clearly shows where their sympathy lies. Bit like the vote in this county for Bobby Sands. Over 30,000 votes. Where'd they come from? Be pleasant, but formal. Good day to you, madam. Sir. Yes, keeping the best, thanks very much. Now off to your IRA friends and tell them the peelers are in the area. Pleasant, but formal. Keep politics and religion out of it. Abide by the rules and do your duty. Remember the uniform and the badge you wear. Remember you are posted at an international border, are subject to international laws governing such borders, and must abide by proper protocol at all times when dealing with your opposite number.
The Irish just like to talk.
Did I say anything that could be interpreted as offensive?
Even over a cup of tea.
I did say the IRA used that GAA bat.
But it's never just a cup of tea. It's a pot of tea.
But it's right, they do. So no one could take offence at that.
And we don't stop at the tea. Sure, you'll have something with that.
Or could they?
And before long, there's a plate of biscuits, a scone, a soda fire, or a full Irish set in front of you.
What if he reports the conversation to his superiors?
We're determined the conversation continues.
Do they report conversations?
But these ones, they have a cup in your hand. That's it, a cup. An English cup of tea. No pot, no food. I mean, what's the message there? Nice to see you, and we're indulging you a little as you can see, but please, drink up quickly and get out of here. How did they ever get business done that way?
At school, we never learned about a border, or how it came about. Northern Ireland simply existed. as it had always existed. We learned of English kings and queens, William the Conqueror, William II, Henry the... We'd a rhyme to remember them by. Willie, Willie, Harry, Steve, Harry, Dick, John, Harry, 3, 1, 2, 3, Ned's Richard, 2, Harry, 4, 5, 6, then who? Edward, 4, 5, Dick the Bad, Harry, Twain, and Ned the Lad, Mary, Bessie, James the Vane, Charlie, Charlie, James again.
If there's one thing the Christian Brothers did, it was to drum our history into us. From Brian Boru to the Norman invasion, the Pale, beyond the Pale, the penal laws in Cardamore, Daniel O'Connell, Parnell, Deaster Rising, then Partition, and this border. From Carlingford Loch to Loch Foy. If you were to go as the crow flies between both those lochs, it'd be less than 100 miles. But being Irish, we like to meander a bit, over hill and down glen, so we've 300 miles of border instead of 100.
It was only when I went to university that I realised how recent Northern Ireland was. That there was people alive who had been born in a united Ireland. Though I suppose back then they didn't call it a united Ireland, it was just Ireland, as it had always been, just as I imagined Northern Ireland had always been. Then I discovered that nationalists called it the North of Ireland rather than Northern Ireland, or the 6 counties. And some even called it the occupied 6 counties. Things you'd grown up taking for granted were suddenly challenged to the core. I was studying law, and one day there was a heated discussion in the classroom. Someone asked the professor what his view was on internment without trial, and whether he thought it was legal. And the professor said that it was most certainly legal, because it was introduced by the Prime Minister of Northern Ireland, who had the power and the right to introduce such a policy. And someone else asked him, it may be legal, but is it just?
My sons, they have sons, as brave as were our fathers. My Fort green field, a well bloom once again, said she. My father get belt that one out like the best of them. Weddings or funerals. No one ever asked what those brave sons were going to do to make the Fort Greenfield bloom again. I think you were just expected to know it would happen. And the less said about it, the better.
I never made it as a lawyer. Never finished my degree. Maybe it was never meant to be. I followed in the footsteps of my father and his father before him. Life in a uniform. Buckle a belt to peak of cap. Buckle a belt to peak of cap. Buckle a belt to peak of cap. Switch off your light, sir.
John Joe, how are you?
Have you any means of identification, sir?
And yourself, Mary, you're well.
Where are you coming from, sir?
He's up in Ellis.
Where are you going to, sir?
And in?
Alpha India Golf 1375. I repeat, Alpha India Golf 1375. Over.
I called in late in Ellis last Sunday night to warn him about some recent burglaries in the area. He was just getting off duty and still had the uniform on, and sure the lads thought it was a raid. Half of them were out the back door and over the hedge with pints still in the hand.
Okay, sir. You can go on.
And how look after yourselves. Keep it between the hedges, John. Keep it between the hedges, John Joe. You can live here for 50 years, 100, and you'd still be a blowing. Unless you'd at least 5 generations buried in the graveyard, you're a blowing. There was a time I wanted to be a blowing. the new lad in town, the exotic creature, and me all the way from Cork. Sure, that was like being from another country altogether. The girls were freer with you. Maybe they thought that as a blow-in you couldn't spread gossip through the parish about how fair you got with them. Suited me. Or maybe they thought you'd take them away with you when you left. But they didn't leave. The temporary posting became something permanent, and you developed habits and customs like everyone else. You sat at a particular pew at Mass on a Sunday morning, drank in Nelly's or McKenna's, wore a tweed jacket that you thought was the height of fashion. And when the wife moved up to join you in the small one-bedroom apartment above Jimmy Fitzpatrick's hardware store, you put the ring back on your finger. Some looked on you with contempt after that. Others seen it as good information to possibly use against you at a later date. Bridie never liked it here. Could never settle. They're weird, she'd say, and nosy into the bargain. Christ, they'd ask you what you had for your breakfast. When the first one came along, we moved into a house outside the village. 3 bedrooms and a garden. Bridie grew spuds and cabbage on one side, onions, leeks and rhubarb on the other. She painted the windows a bright blue and the front door to match. She had an old Singer sewing machine that would make new curtains and cushion covers, summer dresses and tea towels. Now, why would you want to be spending money on tea towels, you say, when it's only a square of cloth stitched at the edge? A real home builder was Bridie. It wasn't a home I wanted then. It was the freedom I'd had before she arrived. She was pregnant with our second when she moved back to her parents. I go down and visit every few months, but as time wore on, the visits became fewer in the months in between longer. When they got older, the boys would travel up here. Jimmy Conley would be up and down the Cork every month, and they'd get a lift up with him on a Friday, and I'd put them on the bus back on a Monday morning. Yeah, they soon grew tired of that. I phone them every so often.
Point 223 Remington, high velocity bullet. Leaves the barrel of the rifle at 3,240 feet per second. And when it hits the body, it's not just the wound, but the shock to the body that does the damage. Hydrostatic shock. A penetrating projectile produces incapacitating effects in a living target through a hydraulic effect in their liquid-filled tissues, in addition to local effects caused by the direct impact, which basically means you could be hit in the chest, but your brain would explode. Could I fire one at another human being to save my own life, the life of a colleague? We're trained to do that. We're told to do that. It is my duty to do that. It helps when you can't see them, that they're figures in the dark somewhere out there, not real. You're not actually aiming at someone to kill them, you're just firing shots, like at an entertainment park. You pull the trigger, if you hit the target, you get the prize of a stuffed animal. We cheered 6 months ago when the SAS did their work out the road. I was in duty that night. Saw them arrive and get out of their 4x4s. They were chatting to each other almost casually, but I knew something was up. I could sense it. We were told by the sergeant to facilitate their every need. They left before dawn. No trace that they were ever here, except for the dead terrorist lying in the field. Someone in the barracks wrote RIP over his wanted poster. A few days later, I saw a picture of him on the front page of the Irish News through a shop window. He looked nothing like his wanted poster. He could have been walking past us every day, and we never would have spotted him. The headline said his family claimed he was ambushed and killed in cold blood. We cheered, not because he was dead, but because we could now live safer knowing that he was no longer around. But killing a wasp is buzzing about your head. It's not the actual kill, it's the peace and quiet that follows, and knowing you're no longer going to be stopped. At least, not until another one arrives, which it surely will. It, or he, or she, arrived 3 months ago. 2 colleagues, Billy and Ian. They just pulled into the forecourt of a garage. Apparently this was something they did regularly. Just as Billy opened the passenger door, he was shot in the forehead. Ian was hit in the neck and face as he sat in the driver's seat. I wonder what they talked about as they pulled into the garage. Just as the car came to a halt, just as that finger gripped the trigger, they shared a joke, with a scandal, plans for the weekend, talking about their families. How would Diana be told such news if ever? Who would tell her?
Constable McCabe.
How would the kids?
Constable McCabe, can you read me over?
Yes, go ahead, Guard O'Halloran.
Tell us this, the price of drinks cheaper up there?
I've never compared it.
Take my word for it, 'tis.
Okay.
We're having a bit of a leave and do for the sergeant. He's retiring after 35 years.
That's nice.
It can't be our bollocks. It's not so much farewell as good riddance. We were thinking of, rather than having or forking out a pile of money, we'd order in a bit of a takeaway and have the party in the barracks.
Good idea.
Me and the boys were just talking, and one of them knows of an off licence in Enniskillen that has a deal on at present.
And?
The way we see it is, if we're going to go that length for the booze, we'd be as well stocking up on a few crates. Sure, it'll be no time at all to Christmas.
I suppose.
We've got the loan of a transit van.
Won't it be a good Christmas?
And it would be sort of embarrassing, like getting stopped on the way back and someone having an issue with the amount of booze on board.
More likely an issue is stopped on your side by customs.
Something tells me they're going to be busy the other end of the county that day.
So you want me to clear the roads for your guys?
I'd never put it that way, Constable McCabe.
Do you know there's nothing illegal about what you're proposing?
Oh, goodness no.
You have friends buying booze in legitimate off-sales, and they're obviously over 18 years of age.
It's been a while now since the pair of them seen 18.
And they are concerned that someone might hijack them in the border area.
Very concerned.
And they are seeking reassurance that on the day everything will be okay.
Couldn't have put it better myself, Constable McCabe.
I'll be on duty next Monday, Tuesday and Friday, Saturday.
I'll be talking to you, Constable McCabe. There has been fear from time to time of foot and mouth disease, and how to stop it spreading across the border when animals stray here and there over the hillside. There has also been ongoing concerns that radio signals emitted from the British Army lookout posts caused illness in livestock on the border. Seems the animals get sort of dizzy and disorientated for no apparent reason. Vets concluded They were in fact suffering from travel sickness. EU subsidies meant they were back and forth over the border so often, the poor creatures didn't know if they were coming or going. Constable McKeown, can you read me over? Constable McKeown, can you read me over? Constable McCabe, can you read me over? Constable McCabe.
It was a bright morning.
Constable McCabe.
We were travelling along side roads we thought safe enough. Our patrol was almost over and I was thinking of bacon and eggs back in the barracks. I was sitting in the front passenger seat of the second Land Rover. My colleagues allowed me to colonise that position. I get travel sick in the back of a jeep. Sometimes I wondered, was it really claustrophobia? 4 men shut inside a tin can with only a dim overhead light, knowing there was nothing you could do but endure the bone-shaking journey in a vehicle built for survival rather than comfort. Stopping to set up a checkpoint was more about getting a breath of fresh air, letting the cigarette smoke escape, stretching your legs, rather than anything to do with security or catching terrorists. We were approaching a sharp bend in the road. I could see the brake lights of the Land Rover in front as it slowed. Just as it turned the corner and was lost from sight, there was a brilliant white flash, followed a split second later by an almighty explosion. The landmine totally obliterated the first jeep. The sound echoed round and round inside our metal box. It wasn't out of skill or training that our driver swerved over a ditch and into the field. It was panic, sheer unadulterated panic, but it saved us. We didn't drive into the crater left in the road by the explosion, and we missed the heavy gunfire that followed.
There are times when you just know something is up. To the outsider, nothing would be amiss. If you're aware of what the familiar looks like, then you can instantly recognise the unfamiliar. Sometimes it was a case of not seeing those you regularly see, or seeing them more often than normal. Locals driving around the roads every few hours as if they were tourists out sightseeing. You knew what they were keeping an eye out for and who they'd signal if need be. These were the same people you would wave to across the street, cheer alongside at a football match, or sit behind at Mass on a Sunday morning. The same people you would hear mutter, "Wasn't it terrible what happened? And it only just up the road from us." It's then you realised you really are the outsider. Not that you come from a different county or parish, but because of what you represent. The greetings remained the same, but the look in the eye and expression on the face told you a different story.
I was back on duty 2 days later. We were tough. That's what we were told. You are tough. I was taken to the scene of the explosion. The place 2 days earlier where 3 colleagues had lost their lives. Another a hand, and another 2 legs. Did you observe anything before the explosion? Did you pass anyone on the road? Did you see anything unusual? I heard their questions as if in a dream and shook my head to each of them. What I could see as I stood by the side of the road were the crows circling overhead. bloated on the not yet rotting harvest of flesh scattered in the fields around us. They put lead weights in the coffin so the bearers won't feel uncomfortable. Garda O'Halloran, do you read me? Garda O'Halloran, come in, please.
Constable McKeown, Garda O'Halloran here. Christ, I thought we'd lost you.
No, still here. Just.
So you weren't... I thought maybe... I think it's time we met.
I agree.
I'll see you in 20. Constable McKeown.
Garda O'Halloran.
I'm Eddie.
David.
Glad to see you're well, David.
Me too.
Did they not transfer you after something like that?
Transfers cost money. And if there's one thing the RUC do not like to do, is spend money.
What is that?
Do you leave these around?
You say you've been threatened and your life's at risk. But even then you have to prove it. How do you do that? Go to Dialect and request a personally signed letter. To whom it may concern, we wish to confirm that if Garda O'Halloran remains in this locality, he will be executed. Yours, IRA Army Council. I'm not that important or dangerous. I made myself comfortable here, and that means not making a name for myself. Doesn't make me feel good telling that to the likes of yourself, given what you've been through, but that's how it is.
Do you think I'm the type who wants to make a name for myself? I just want to get through life as best I can. Have a home, rear a family, bring home the pay at the end of the month. But this uniform's what people see. This is what defines me. I'm a peeler, or a black bastard. Republicans say we're all unionists. Unionists say we're soft and Republicans. We're a third community. Community of police officers. We work in the same buildings, live in the same housing estates, socialise in the same venues. We even marry one another. How fucked up is that?
Used to be the law down here that if you were to marry a band gal, a female gal, she had to resign.
You serious?
We're fucked up too, you see.
So, where exactly is it?
Where exactly is what?
The border.
You'd be a wise man to tell you that. Or a farmer. It doesn't look that different over there.
The grass is no greener, that's for sure.
Well, it is the same field after all.
In case it could be regarded as an armed invasion.
Jesus, it's Volunteer O'Halloran.
Could this be regarded as an international incident?
We are not armed, so it's not technically an invasion.
So what does that make you?
Oh, I'm acting on the words of that other famous cartman, tea shop, Jack Lynch. We'll not stand idly by. It's 1969 all over again, and O'Halloran's demanded a day, but Jesus Cork will be proud of him. So here's to the boys of Kilmichael. Those brave lads so gallant and true, that fought 'neath the green flag of Erin, and conquered the red, white and blue. Here, before I get carried away,
Did you always want to be a guard?
I was never going to be a teacher and accountant, that's for sure. Neither the brains nor the patience. My mother, God rest her, had high hopes I'd go into the priesthood. But my hormones had other desires. Not that that seemed to bother others who did take up that vocation. I was going to join the cousins in London on the building sites. And I bumped into an old teacher of mine and he says, "What are you at, Daddy? Find yourself any work yet?" You know, I always had respect for Master McGuigan, and he says, "Why don't you apply for the guards? You've got the temperament for it. I'd put in a good word for you." I'd never thought of being a guard, would never have imagined it for a moment. And Master McGuigan, seeing me as one, opened up something in me. Maybe I didn't have to leave and go to England. I could stay and be something, be someone. I began to imagine life in Mitchellstown as a guard. How I'd patrol the town, speaking to the shopkeepers, call into the schools and regularly meet with the teachers and children, have a drink in the local pub of an evening, cheer on the local footballers on a Sunday. Dreams of a child who thought he could be something.
I sat my exam for promotion, failed it. They want you to rhyme off traffic regulations, crime control, and how to improve public relations. I had to give my head a shake to see if I'd come to the right place. I'd left duty the night before after helping out at a murder scene. 1 dead, 2 injured. Nowhere in the exam paper did it refer to how you deal with that. I was back on duty the next day, lying in a hedge, cold and wet, carrying a rifle, wearing a flak jacket, thinking, how does the dice fall?
That's not what you know, it's who you know. I went home a few years back to my mother's funeral. I met a guy who was at school yet, 4 years younger than me. He's now a superintendent in Waterford. And he made sure to tell me several times. He spoke to me about my on-the-board or duty as if it was some sort of not to be spoken about and polite company type work. Whereas he was doing real guard work. His uncle's a TD and he wonder he is where he is.
I suppose cutting down on traffic accidents is real police work. Not what we're doing here. You know, my 25 years in the force, I haven't issued one summons. But I could tell you how to make a methodical search of a house, or the best position to adopt when under fire, or how to save the life of someone just being hit by a round from an AK-47.
I was on a search out the road here a few years back. Leading Republican. I knew him to meet on the street or at a football match. Plain enough guy. We arrived at the door. I held back expecting the sergeant to do the needful and go to the door with a search warrant. And he told me to serve the warrant. I remember walking up the path to the front door of the house. I knew I was being watched with every step I took. I knocked on the door and prayed there would be no answer, but either God didn't hear my prayer, or I had long since exhausted any special favours there. He opened the door. "We've a warrant to search your premises." He didn't speak a word. He just looked right through me as if I didn't exist. I was nothing. It was some idiot from Cork who had somehow got hold of a uniform and thought in some crazy fucked up moment of euphoria that I could enforce the law of the land. He shut the door in my face. He didn't slam it, just closed it slowly. There was a cat on the doorstep, a black Siamese. It looked at me, yawned, stood up on its legs, stretched, and walked over my feet. I stood on that doorstep when I was back in school, 8 years of age. Standing at my desk after the Christian brother had slapped me hard in the face with his hand. I'd heard an uncle a few days earlier describe a neighbour as a helpful cunt. I thought it was a good word to call someone. So when asked how I would like God to view me, that's what I said. After the search, I didn't go into the pub for about 6 months. Even when I did, they were polite enough, but conversation never went much beyond the weather, and wasn't it shocking the state of the roads? Now carry a paper to the pub on the odd night I do go. Even if I don't read what's on the page in front of me, it looks like I'm otherwise engaged, and that's the reason no one's in my company.
I don't have a local. But I've always liked that feeling when you walk into a pub and you see people who are familiar with one another. The chat's lively and there's good humour, banter, or backstabbing, whoever's not there. Sort of place me and the wife, Diana, could go for a pint before dinner on a Friday evening to greet the weekend. Where I'd walk in and the barman would go, "Oh, David, great to see you," the usual. And others would nod over or wave at you. I'd love the familiarity in that. But the one thing drummed into us is terrorists don't kill you. Habit and routine does. So I'm a stranger to a pub. A visitor or a tourist. Never a regular. And I'm a stranger to home. It's 7 years since I visited my mother. The last time I was there, I was pacing the floor, looking out the windows, watching every car that passed. Made her nervous. Now she travels to visit me. It's a strange feeling, that of being haunted. It's not like driving into a random ambush. That way, you're an anonymous target. But when you know someone's specifically targeting you,
Watching your movements.
piling a dossier with your name at the top,
Seeking an opportunity to kill you.
all through this part of the field, join that part of the field.
I need to be getting back.
Do you think it will ever end?
The optimist in me says things always change. But when you look at Irish history, the pessimists have the stronger argument.
So why do we continue?
Politics, of course.
No, I mean us. You and me. Why do we continue? I know I can be killed at any time, on duty, off duty, in between duty. And you're barely tolerated in your own community.
We do things today because we did them yesterday, or last week, or last year. We took on a role that then became an identity, and that identity now defines us. I'm no longer Eddie, nor you David. I'm a guard, you're a peeler. We're a uniform, not real people. Rightly or wrongly, we now view the world from that perspective.
It was all down to fate and circumstance. If that teacher hadn't said to you that you'd make a good guard, you'd never have ended up here. If my father hadn't been a peeler, I might not have become one.
I suppose.
So when do we decide what it is we want to do, rather than what it is we become?
We don't. We go along with it because it's what we're now comfortable with. We may dream of something else we could do, but tomorrow we'll be doing what we're doing today. I tell you what I have thought of, though. One day, I'm going to...
God, no, Helen. Lenny! Lenny! God, no, Helen! Lenny!
Yes, I understand. Stick to the facts. Provide the bare minimum. I was in the vicinity on the evening of the 30th of October when I heard a rifle shot. It was one shot. It was a light track, and I identified it as coming from a high-velocity rifle, possibly the Barrett Light 50 rifle, favored by the IRA as a sniper's rifle. I thought initially that my patrol was under fire. My colleagues and I immediately took cover and began to check that each one of us was still alive and not injured. We then radioed the base to report the incident and began to move from our locations to see if we could locate the source of the shot or the intended target. It was during our search that we spotted who I now know to be Garda O'Halloran on the other side of the border. It seemed that he was dead, or at very least, badly injured. We alerted the Garda Síochána and our own sergeant back at the base. What does it matter what side of the border he was on when he was shot? He's still dead. He's not coming back to tell a story or raise a row. He's dead. Yes, I understand that it's important for political reasons that he was not in the north when he was shot. That it would cause embarrassment in diplomatic circles. That it would mean questions being raised in Parliament, most likely an inquiry. And it could have consequences for the family of Garda O'Halloran in terms of compensation for his death whilst on duty. I know all that. I was in the vicinity on the evening of the 30th of October, when I heard a rifle shot.
It was one shot. It was a loud track, and I identified it as coming from a high-velocity rifle, possibly the Barrett Light 50 rifle, favoured by the IRA as a sniper's rifle. I thought initially that my patrol was under fire. My colleagues and I immediately took cover and then checked that each one of us was still alive and not injured. I was in the vicinity on the evening of the 30th of October when I heard a rifle shot. It was one shot. It was a loud track, and I identified it as coming from a high-velocity rifle, possibly the Barrett Light 50 rifle, favoured by the IRA as a sniper's rifle. I thought initially that my patrol was under fire. My colleagues and I immediately took cover and then checked that each one of us was still alive and not injured.
We breathed a sigh of relief when the ceasefire was called in '94. Even when it collapsed in '96, the belief was that it would be reinstated again, which it was in '97. In the following year, we had the Belfast Agreement. Shortly after that, all those we had struggled for years to put into prison were released. Heroes welcome back into their communities. They're elected representatives now. Fair enough, I suppose. They're no longer killing anyone. We, the RUC, were told politely that we had done a good job, but now it was time for a change. New name, new uniform, fresh start. We had a choice. We could accept the proposals from the Patent Commission and take early retirement, a pension and a healthy handshake. Or we could stay on, but forget about the handshake. I was posted to Dublin as part of a new initiative with an Garda Conan. Things move quickly when there's a will. I was to work on IT with Garda colleagues at their headquarters in Phoenix Park. It's true that I did have an interest in that area of work, but I think the transfer was more to do about getting me out of duty in the north following the investigation into Garda O'Halloran's death. The investigation into Eddie's death. Phoenix Park in Dublin was a whole new world to me. The freedom of anonymity. The freedom of realizing people were not staring at me. It took me some time to realize I was no longer wearing a uniform. One day walking through Phoenix Park, or joggers, people on bikes, families going to the zoo, tourists. And Eddie's words come back to me. We're a uniform, not real people. Rightly or wrongly, we now view the world from that perspective. I stopped dead in my tracks. And for the first time, I realized I was no longer a uniform. I could view the world from whatever perspective I decided it was up to me. Me, David McKeown. David McKeown, person. Son of Richard and Joan McKeown. Husband to Diana. Father to Rebecca and William. I finished the course in Phoenix Park and was posted to Belfast. I was now to work on delivering a new training programme. But my heart wasn't in it. I would have had to have killed off the life that woken me that day in Phoenix Park. I could be a uniform or it could be me. I couldn't be both. I did the Camino Trail, Santiago in Spain. I was totally prepared, of course. Old habits die hard. I had maps, the recommended amount of luggage, first aid kit, proper boots, sunblock, and I plotted my journey around the best hostels. I would get up at 4 a.m., have breakfast, and be in the road for 5, and a 20k walk before the day became too hot. I met all sorts of people, heard every language imaginable. At the end of the day, I'd sit down over a cold beer and record thoughts in the moment. I wanted to recall all of it when I got back home. I visited Eddie's family shortly afterwards. Took the train to Cork. I met Bridie and his 2 sons. At first, Bridie was a bit standoffish, understandable. She had long since moved on. A new man in her life, a new family. But she was gracious enough to hear me out. I described to her their cottage, as Eddie had told me, how she painted the windows and front door a bright blue, how she grew spuds and cabbage on one side of the garden and onions, leeks, rhubarb on the other. And I told her that Eddie did not die alone, that it wasn't as described in the media and official reports. I told him how he laughed and chatted and joked, right up until the moment his life was taken. and I told them Eddie's final words. One day I'm going to.